Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Dexter L. Barlovento, and I'm a graduate student at Taguig City University. Today, I'm going to be discussing the use of system theory and public relations practice. While learning about various management and organizational theories, this theoretical framework truly stood out to me as being incredibly relevant to my role as a professional social worker and was something I wanted to explore further. Now, a quick overview of the topics I will be discussing. First, I will attempt to answer the question, what is systems theory? Then I will examine the basic concepts of crisis and consensus in an attempt to understand how these terms lay the groundwork for the relationship between systems theory and public relations. This will be followed by an examination of history of systems theory in relation to the public relation. Next, we will look at the basic applications of system theory to public relations and conclude by considering why system theory is an important paradigm for public relations research. Scholar T.J. Roach explains according to systems theory, all biological entities, commercial organizations, or social institutions are part of a system. This system is composed of three main elements: the organization or organism, environment, and goals. When the environment changes, the system registers the change and responds either by adjusting to the environment or by changing the environment. John Pavlik in 1987 discussed the theme of interconnectedness. Systems are by definition whole, says Pavlik. They are not merely a collection of unrelated parts, rather, an integrated whole. Every parts are to a degree interdependent. Thus, a change in a part causes changes throughout the system. So why are these parts interdependent? An example given by Phillips suggests when entity A is related to entity B, it gains some property P as a result of the relationship outside the relationship. Entity A does not have P property as therefore not A. According to E.L. Toth, for organizations to be effective, they must concern themselves with the environment if they are to survive the system's focus. Meaning, rather than the ends to achieving the ends, such as the input throughout and output that will maintain an organization. Originating from Greek and Latin terms meaning decision or discrimination in English, the term crisis became designated as a turning point in a disease or the point in the course of a serious illness at which a decisive change occurs leading to a recovery or death. Of course, we know that crisis is to be used in different circumstances today, but that was the origin. The term consensus was first used in the English language as a medical term meaning health or the consensus of the organs of the body, essentially the opposite of crisis. While crisis indicates chaos, consensus, on the other hand, indicates an agreement and a sense of calm. So how does these two words relate to systems theory in public relations? According to Roche, these two words serves to remind us of the common denominator in all communications no matter how we say it. Everything we say must fall on one side of the scale or the other, moving us towards consensus or crisis. As explained, when the environment changes, the system registers the change and responds either by adjusting to the environment or by changing the environment. If the adjustment is full, consensus is maintained. If not, crisis is reached based on its ability to recognize and adopt change, the system either survives or expires. In public relations, we understand system theory in terms of an organization interacting with its public. In order to survive and prosper, it is the public relations practitioner's responsibility to evaluate and respond to the environment in order to move the organization towards consensus and away from crisis. Grudig and Hunt in 1984 agreed upon this sentiment by explaining that public relations manager must control conflicts and negotiate between the demands of the environment and the need for the organization to survive and prosper. System theory as a paradigm through which to view public relations first became popular in the late 70s and early 80s. Grunig, Hunt, and Publique were all scholars who viewed system theory as important to the public relations research. In his 1987 book, Public Relations What Research Tells Us, Publique suggested that understanding public relations is aided by an emerging organizational view of the field, general system theory. In 1985, a new chapter was added to cut lip and center effective public relations, the well-known public relations test with the longest history, publishing its first edition in 1952. This chapter added in 1985 was called Adjustment and Adaptation, a theoretical model for public relations which employs system theory. Similarly, Grunig, Hunt, Nagar, and Allen use a systems perspective in their public relations test as well. In public relations, we understand system theory in terms of an organization interacting with its publics in order to survive. The adjustment made in order to maintain consensus within a system requires feedback. If a system does not receive feedback from its publics, it cannot make wise adjustments according to Roche. Public relations practitioners help elicit this feedback and make the necessary adjustments in order to keep the organization on track with its environment. As previously mentioned, Grunig and Hunt believed it is the public relations manager's role to control conflict and negotiate between the demands of the environment and the needs for the organization to prosper. For example, if an organization was a living organism to the public relations practitioner, would be the control center needed in order to maintain homeostasis. And I'm sure you're all familiar with Grunig's four models of public relations, and especially his idealistic two-way symmetrical model of communications. The foundation of these models revolves around using equal to a communication between an organization and its stakeholders to resolve conflicts and promote mutual understanding and respect between the organization and stakeholders. Sounds familiar, right? According to Thought, this two-way symmetrical model is directly related to system theory for an organization to maintain consensus. It must not only communicate to its environment but plays an important role in receiving feedback as well. It is all about the give and take of organization and its environment in order for an organization to have survived. While there are some concerns with using systems theory as a prominent theory to examine public relations, for example, Pearson stated in 1990 article that in conclusion, it is not clear what adoption of systems theory will mean for public relations. It may simply provide the profession with a highly technical and sometimes frustrating and mystifying language, which to talk about organizational goals and objectives without subjecting these critical analysis. But system theory could also provide a language and the concept for reconstructing public relations as a particular kind of collaborative decision-making process. I think it is easy to see the connection between systems theory and public relations practice. Public relation practitioners exist for the purpose of maintaining the relationship between an organization and its environment. This would not be needed if an organization was totally disconnected from that environment. Terms such as crisis communication or stakeholder engagement are just a couple of examples of how system theory has helped shape public relations practice. We cannot look at an organization as being separate from its environment. We must do our best to maintain consensus and avoid crisis by monitoring and responding to our environments at all times. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.